What's up guys, it's Mark here. I hope you're all doing really well today. I was just working on some custom lettering here, as you can see on my screen, and I've been trying to spend some time lately working on adding flourishes and other ways to kind of fancy up my scripts a little bit and stuff like that, and really just been digging into all the different ways I can adjust each letter and where I can add different flourishes and stuff like that. And I thought that it might be a good idea to just make a video and show you guys some of my favorite ways to add ligatures and little swashes and flourishes and stuff like that to enhance your lettering, because you can see here on the screen on the right hand side I've just got this normal lettering, just a script that I drew just before, and on the left hand side you can see a rough sketch version of it with some flourishes that I've added, and you can tell, you know, it really adds like a massive impact just to add a few swirls, and really it's not as difficult as it looks. That's one thing I've learned. I've really been studying this a bit lately, and I always used to just think, nah, it's super complex, I don't know where to add them, and didn't really bother. And the more I look into it, the more I realize it's actually not that hard to do, and it's more about just learning where to place the right shapes and stuff like that. So I thought I'd make a video and show you guys some of my favorite ones. Now, just before I get stuck into that, I just want to say I've had a look. I'm at about 970 subscribers right now, almost at 1,000, which is amazing. It's only been a few months that I've been working on the channel, so I wanted to say thank you so much. And another thing is, I wanted to just say I have a new font out called Shapeshifter, which I sell online for about 12 or 15 bucks. And I've decided that because I'm almost at 1,000, I might as well give away some copies of the font or something like that to celebrate 1,000 subscribers. So I've decided that when I hit 1,000 subscribers on my channel, I'm going to email a bunch of people at random off my email list and just give you guys a free copy of the font as a little token of appreciation for following me and supporting my work and all that sort of thing. So if you would like to get a copy of this font, then by all means feel free to jump on my email list. It's I'll have a link to it in the description, but I promise it's no spam or any bullshit like that. I literally only use it to send out an email once every week or two that just says, hey, here's some new tutorials I've made, here's a new font I've made, or here's a new texture that I released and stuff like that, or here's a good free font that I found online. That's pretty much it. It's just design stuff, no spamming or selling you any bullshit or anything like that. So yeah, anyway, thanks guys, and in the meantime, let's get stuck into this video. Alrighty guys, so the very first one I want to show you is what I tend to call a tail, or it's often called a swash as well, I believe. And this is really easy to add to your lettering. You'll notice that I do this in a lot of my custom scripts and stuff like that. If you look at my Instagram, pretty much all of them have this. And a really easy way to do this is anytime you have a letter, a word that ends in a letter like G or Y or something like that, you can basically be cheering, because it's like a free, easy swash to add to your lettering. So I've just quickly sketched the word being here, just rough and loose and everything like that. But let's look at some of the different ways that I could spruce this up a little bit and add some stuff to it. So this G here, for example, it's very easy for me to simply add a little loop to it or something like that. I could easily do that. Another one could be, I could bring it down here and do something a bit straighter, so it almost has like a corner to it. Could do something like that. Another one that's a little bit more fancy that I like is if I come all the way down here, loop back up and around, and then come across like that. That's another one. And then what you can do as well is you can erase some little sections here, and if you do this neatly, it can give the impression that there's a shadow there, like it's looping in and behind and stuff like that. So that's another cool one. And you don't have to always use the bottom of a G or a Y to give it something special. You could even extend off this back bit up the top here. You could extend around here, maybe go back and reach this I, for example, dot the I. That's pretty easy. Let's see, what else can we do? We can still use the tail or the descender, I should say, to come back up around this way as well and add a little bit of fanciness there. So anytime you get a G or a Y on the end of a letter, on the end of a word, I should say, it's super easy. There's so many extra like free combinations that you get, so always a really handy one to have. Now let's say that you had a word like this and it didn't end with a G. So if I just erase it, we'll just pretend that the word being doesn't have a G on it anymore. And let's just say if it ended with the N, I could still add a swash to this just by curling up and around, coming underneath it, and then just adding a line like that. And if I wanted to make this a bit more interesting as well, something that I think is inspired by a lot of baseball logos and stuff like that, you can add a little bit of a tail to it to do something like that as well, which is pretty cool. So that's another option. Another thing you can do with the N is you can just bring it further down and then simply loop it back that way. And that works well for a lot of letters as well. It doesn't have to be an N, it could be an M, for example. And you could do something similar to what we did with the G just earlier, where it can still, even though the letter finishes down here, it can very easily be used to add something up into this top area. So we could quite easily just add a big flourish there to dot off the I's. It's always a nice one to do too. You don't really have to be restricted to letters like N or G or Y to add things to the end of your lettering either. So you can still simply grab, let's just say that I've got the word to over here, so T and then an O. I might add something like that in as well. You could still use the end of this O to create something cool like that, or it could loop out here and go off and do something else, like connect to another letter. And you could even use another vowel like A. And if you had an A here, you could still quite easily bring it all the way down and around like that. And you can still use the end of it to create one of those swashes underneath as well. The letter T is also one of my little favorites because you can pretty much connect it to any other letter. So you can use the crossbar on this T to loop over something else. You can also use the T to fill gaps as well. So for example, you might have this bit of a visual space here and you might want to fill that. You can very easily just extend the T all the way across. You could even do something like that. Add a bit more of a curve to it. And this is really handy if you have sort of stacked lettering. If you imagine that there were words here as well, and if I had a capital B, for example, I wouldn't be able to really move this word, the word burnt, any closer to the word above it. So it creates a bit of a visual gap there. So it's a bit of an easy way to fill those gaps, is to add a nice crossbar to your T like that. So that covers a lot of letters that finish off words and some descenders and some cool swashes and stuff like that. But let's have a look at some letters now that have ascenders, or that are a little bit taller, and how we can use them to our advantage to fill space as well. So I've got the word cooked over here, and you could use either the K or the D here quite a lot. There's a lot of stuff that can be done with this. First of all, I could easily just add something off the back of that K to fill that gap. Could even do the same thing with the D. So that's kind of cool. Another one that works well with the D here, get your mind out of the gutter, is we could add a loop to it and bring it back over this way. Something like that could work. We could still do one of those long sort of, I don't really know what to call these, but we could still do one of those long sort of tails with it as well. And of course, even if you've got one on the top, there's no reason why you can't use it underneath here either. Of course, you don't need to have a K or a D or something like that. You can even use an L. So I could still loop off this L. If I had the word animal, I could loop back over and I could use it to dot the I there. I could still do something like that, another sort of tail shaped one. And again, I can still always add a swash underneath without things getting too complex. I think usually with the L, it can be a little bit confusing to the mind, especially if it's next to an A like that. It can almost get a bit confused with the D. So for me personally, I would tend to loop it, I think, a bit more like that. But there's so many options that start to become available once you learn, the different techniques like this. So let's talk a bit more about some of the more complicated ones, because that's a lot of the sort of basic ones to add to individual letters. But let's talk about adding those big swirly flourishes and stuff like that. Now, I should probably make a bit of a disclaimer that this part is still kind of new to me, but I still think that there's a lot of stuff that we can easily learn here. So on the right hand side here, I've got this lettering that I drew up, and let's talk about some of these flourishes that I added on this sketch on the left hand side. So first of all, one little technique that I've noticed is the sort of the figure of 8, as I've called it. It's that underneath pretty much anything you can add a sort of a figure 8. Whoops, it's on white, sorry. You can add a sort of a figure 8 shape like that. And I guess one of the things that I've noticed that this needs in order to work is that it needs to come back to the middle when it finishes. So this finishing point here should be somewhere near the middle. I've noticed that that's the case in a lot of lettering and a lot of flourishes that I look at. And if you don't finish there, if you finish off to the side like that, it can be a bit awkward underneath the letter. So I think a good idea is to come back towards the center like I did up here when you're finishing, rather than sort of leaving it out by itself. So the figure eight's really handy. You can even add plenty more underneath that too. So technically if you had a Y, you could sort of just keep going like that. I've seen that in some pretty crazy lettering before, seen people do that. And you can also do it off the top like I did with this L here. So you can extend a letter, say the letter D again. You could extend it up like that and you know, add some more sort of figure eights there. And they're really good for filling space above and below your lettering, I find. And then you need to think about, whoops, if you've got those flourishes above and below, you want to start balancing off the outsides as well. Otherwise it looks a bit awkward if there's nothing above, if nothing on the sides. So one thing that I've noticed that works really well is that pretty much any letter you can add a sort of a, I don't know what to call this, but it's a bit of a love heart shape almost with these circular swirls. So off the edge of pretty much any letter, you can add something like this. So if I've got the T and then I've got the O, I can add a circle like that. So again, I think the key to making this work is that it comes back toward near the center when it finishes. Whereas if I had just sort of let this, if I came up here and had just sort of let this go out there, it doesn't quite look right. It doesn't quite come back to fill the space properly. So I think it really does need to sort of loop back around like that and come back towards the center. And these are pretty much exactly the same on both sides. I just went off the back of this B here, did the exact same thing. You could go off the top of the Y, do the same thing, off the end of a T and do something similar. There's so many combinations, and all it really takes is those two core shapes, and you can sort of mix and match them to create pretty much anything. So I'm going to keep experimenting with this over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully I'll make a follow-up video and explain some more little tricks and techniques and stuff like that. If you guys have any suggestions, or if you know much about flourishes, I'm all ears. By all means, let me know in the comments, or let me know of any other videos you've seen that you know, that can cover this and help us all learn it. But yeah, if there's anything you didn't quite understand or you want me to explain a little bit more in detail, by all means ask away in the comments. And thank you so much for subscribing. I can't believe I'm almost 1,000 subscribers already. That's crazy. Thank you so much, guys. Hope you have a great day. And if you liked the video, I would hugely appreciate if you could give it a thumbs up. Thanks a lot, guys.